Hey guys, excuse me. It's quote unquote your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. I'm sorry, a great response video. So in this video, we're responding to Rollo Masi, arguing or debating with this hot Israeli girl, and it's I don't know, it's probably not going to be as one-sided as you might expect. You probably think it would be like all me bashing Rollo, but at the beginning he starts off kind of strong, then he goes full Rollo closer towards the end. I mean, like I'm going to try to edit this to take away some of the dead space, but my editing skills, as you know, are very weak. So just bear with me here. Before we get into the content of the video, two things I want to quickly address. People have been asking me for an update on the Ukraine situation. I was going to do that, but now I'm going to hold off on it for the time being because my position isn't really any different than it was in my last video. There was a time where I was kind of like, oh no, it looks like the Ukrainians are going to stalemate them, even after I made that video. But now I'm back to being very confident of a Russian victory. The only thing I don't know is if Russia's going to take over the entire country or not. Right now, I suspect that they are. I think Russia's in a really good position. So like when the situation, when events change enough, I'd be happy to make an update. I just don't want to make a video that doesn't add anything to my last video that beyond speculation. The other thing is, because I've had people ask me about this, because I'm Jewish, I get a lot of questions about Jewish women. It's usually some variant of like, do you think you wouldn't be an incel if you could just marry like go to Israel and marry a Jewish woman or something? First of all, I just want to clarify that I don't consider myself an incel. The incels. Well, you know what? I don't even really want to debate that because it ends up becoming a debate about what incel means, and that would be a whole different video. Second of all, I mean, could I marry a Jewish woman and have kids with her if I wanted? The answer is sort of. If I was willing to like actually practice, like, I mean, I believe all this stuff, but I'm not observant at all. Like, I mean, I'm making this video on the Sabbath, which is really bad. If I was willing to like actually be observant, yeah, I could probably find an arranged marriage. I might have to move to Israel, but it wouldn't be like, it's not just that. It's like I wouldn't just have to be observant. I would have to be like willing to study like 10 hours a day, and like I said, be observant, study 10 hours a day, and it's not if you want an arranged marriage, it's not an easy lifestyle. But the thing is, that doesn't really have anything to do with like being Jewish per se, because anybody can do that. Like, I mean, you can just, like, if that's all you want, you can just convert to Judaism and go get an arranged marriage. It's really not that hard. I just don't know if the juice would be worth the squeeze. So then another question is, people ask me, like, I get like a lot of comments like either Jewish women are ugly or Jewish women are beautiful. And the truth is both of those statements don't really make any sense, because Jewish isn't really is a nationality. It's not an ethnicity. So the like generally when people say Jews are ugly, they're thinking about like what Polish and Russian Jews. So that's what I am. So generally when you talk about like negative stereotypes about how Jews look, like not so much a big nose, although it's that too, but a disproportionately big nose and like big ears and just, unattractive facial features overall. That's really only for Jews from Poland and Eastern Europe. I hope I'm not going to get banned for this. That's really only from Jews from Poland and Russia, because like I said, like where my family was from, there was like an insane amount of inbreeding. And it wasn't like inbreed. It was like, when I say inbreeding, I mean like insane inbreeding for like 600 years. So it takes a toll on your looks. but if you talk about Jews from Germany or Hungary, or especially Sephardic Jews from Greece or I don't know, Turkey or Bulgaria, and then maybe most of all, like North African Jews, especially Moroccan, they tend to be very attractive, and maybe even more attractive than the surrounding populations. And then the same thing with Iranian Jews. Or well, you can't be more attractive than there's no such thing as prettier than an Iranian girl, but I would say Iranian Jewish girls are about as pretty as Iranian non-Jewish girls, and Iraqi kind of the same thing. So that's why, like, saying like that, so like whether you think Jewish girls are attractive or not, it kind of depends which ones you're talking about. This particular one, I'm guessing she's half Western Ashkenazic, like probably Hungarian or Czech or something, and half Moroccan, something like that. She's does got a great facial structure. She's got like just a phenomenal bone structure. Um, so yeah, so how deep are we into the video now? So I'm sorry I wasted your guys' time with that. It's just that I get a lot of questions on both of those issues, so I wanted to address that. So anyway, um, what's her name? So this video is titled "Her Experience with Fresh and Fit Tainted Her Perception of Alphas." So I actually want to let her talk for a little bit at the beginning, even though she's really annoying, because I think she makes, I don't know if I want to say a good point, kind of an important point, even if it's something we've discussed before. So let's have her speak for herself.
That it reflects reality,
right. Which is why
like a YouTuber created this. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I'm having fun with the conversation, but I also think every single alpha that I've met in my life, other than you guys, anybody. Sorry, not every single alpha.
Thank you. I'm an alpha.
No. Let me say something a little bit more precise.
Yes.
Every single man that I've met who's called himself an alpha and made a point to say
Alphas
it out loud.
They
don't. Has been the most triggered by an independent.
Okay, what Rollo said there is true. Again, it's not a particularly novel point, but it's something I've definitely noticed. I'm sure you guys have all noticed. This whole thing of like, now it's the meme is like, haha, alphas and betas don't even really exist. It's like, look, that may be true in some kind of social science way, but we've all met people who you think like, oh, that guy's really alpha, and we've all met people who go, oh, that guy's really beta. And here's the final story on that. Okay, they're basically alpha and beta. It's like autism. You're not really autistic or not autistic per se. You're somewhere on the autism spectrum, and some people are so far on it that we just call them autistic. And that's exactly how it is with alpha and beta. It's a spectrum. So some people are so far towards the beta end of the spectrum that we just call them beta. Some people are so far towards the alpha end of the spectrum that we just call them alpha. And then I would add a third. We might talk about it a little bit later. Sometimes you see these people, especially I'm sure you guys have been seeing the videos about sigmas. That's like gigacope shit. There's no such thing as a sigma. What there is though is a gamma, which is somebody who is kind of in between the alpha and beta spectrum, or maybe even slightly on the alpha side of the spectrum, but is really fragile and is a like major league coper to the point where it causes them to try to overcompensate and become, aggressive. But it's based on a real fragility. The aggression is based on a real fragility. A great example of a gamma would be Rollo Tomasi himself. So let's go on.
Independent woman, or by any kind of retaliation to that opinion. Like they cannot hold their own without getting emotional.
The fact that she used the word retaliation, which was not the correct word, and I'm not even I don't know, response, dispute, whatever, but retaliation is the wrong word. And I'm not trying to pick on it. Like I've done this all the time. What I'm trying to say is a mistake like that is that, like, even though she's calm and she's trying to use the right words, if you listen to her speech, it's all the clear signs of midwittism. Everything that you hear with Rollo, you hear with her. I mean, this chick is a hardcore midwit. I would say 100. I would guess her IQ is below 115. I would say her IQ is somewhere between 110 and 115. Total midwit.
Gamma not trying to get up into alpha class, is what that is.
For example, they might kick women off of their show because they can't contend with them.
Well, wait. Yes, the fresh and the fit guys are huge gammas, and she's referencing to her being kicked off the show. It's like, I don't know what it's about. I don't care.
Wait. No names have been named. Hold on.
Dude, those fucking legs, man.
Do you think that that's them being emotional or trying to establish rules? Two things. I think. Well, trying to.
Yeah, Torsia is like the world's biggest. I think she's what feminists call a pick-me, and which is kind of like I guess a female version of a simp, and like that she would even try to stand up for those guys. She's basically saying, look, they're just trying to establish boundaries. They're not being fragile. It's like, what the fuck? Have you ever listened to them? They're like the most. I don't know much about Fresh. He's okay, but Myron is like the most fragile guy I've ever seen.
To establish rules that would insinuate that you're having a conversation with somebody who needs to be trained, which I disagree with.
No, I don't think that's true. I think that you need to have. I think that in any conversation there are boundaries. Like if you're talking to me, and then you just start saying, like, you just start shouting, "Ballface 80/20, you're a huge faggot. Fuck you, die, 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 die," over and over. Like, I'm gonna say that, like, this is not, productive. This is not a productive conversation. So if we're gonna talk this way, I'd prefer to end this conversation. And it's nothing like me trying to establish dominance or something. It's just not the kind of conversation that, that I'd really get anything out of participating in. And that's all it is. There's always boundaries in any conversation. And it's certainly when you're hosting on a radio show, there's going to be boundaries, and you're the one making those boundaries. And now that's not to say that Fresh and the Fit's boundaries aren't bullshit. They may be. I don't know. But there are going to be it. So there's nothing wrong with boundaries or rules in and of themselves. And it's certainly not an insinuation that the person you're talking to needs to be trained.
Secondly, I also think that on that show, there's more of it. Not that show specific.
She's got to stop the makeup. She's got to tone down the makeup a little bit.
Any show that we're talking about ambiguously, there's a huge emphasis on getting views, and what gets views is making a drama. So if, for example, somebody says that she believes that her husband or her man should cook as well, and you get so triggered by that, you have to kick them off of your show. To me, that is.
From what I read in the comments, that's not why she got kicked off. So I don't know. As for her actual point that, the husband should cook for the wife. We might talk about this more later. I think we will in this video, but I can just tell you about the marriages I've seen. You do kind of see that. I don't know if it's 50-50 per se, but splitting kind of a split of the cooking, or that it's not always the woman cooking. I do see a lot of that. I think it's hard to judge because I don't know if we're talking about with kids or without kids. Not that I haven't seen it. With kids too, or without kids too. I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. But when there are kids in the picture, especially, we don't have the extended family to take care of the kids like we did in the past. And usually both parents are working. There tends to be kind of everybody does everything because it's so busy. I don't know if you've been in households with small children. So that's just kind of, but it's not really some kind of ideological feminist thing. That's just what I've noticed in my experience. I'm not saying it's true for everybody.
It is very telling about the kind of man that you are.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that. I think that this is very common in the manosphere, is this extreme fragility. I know that that's a word like liberals like to use, but hopefully I'm not using it in the same way they do. Or if I am, it may be one thing that they're kind of right about, which is just a kind of, insecurity or inherent defensiveness. And it's very common, like extremely common in the manosphere. Yeah.
So you're saying that person is not an alpha, and
in reality, it might be a gamma.
I don't put labels on people like that. That's the only thing.
By the way,
I'm looking for labels here. To be honest with you, I want labels so I can understand this.
I know, and a lot of people do. They want the step by step. They want, give me something identified.
Rollo. Hey, I was thinking, can you do me a favor and just never talk about any subject ever again? That would make the world a better place. So that would be nice. I don't know if you're watching, if you could do that.
Well, and I appreciate your point. I do. And nobody likes to be labeled, and we don't like generalizations, but I do like to see who fits into these categories. Which
is why I always say I don't like, I mean.
Yeah, again, I think what he's saying there is true. These categories, like if you start making it like a religious thing, like some autistic red pillers do, there's autists in the red pill community too. They're maybe not quite as annoying as the autist in the black pill community, but they definitely are there. And no, I mean, again, it's a spectrum, but alpha and beta, those words do have value for descriptive purposes, and so does gamma. So this girl can just say, well, I'm opting out. I don't talk about people like that. And that's probably productive because you don't want to get into a debate about labels. But like from a more of an emotional descriptive discussion, like us amongst ourselves here, we can use them. We can use it. And yeah, absolutely. Fresh in the fit. Or, again, I don't know anything about Fresh. The guy doesn't talk. But Myron is like one of the biggest examples of a gamma you'll ever see. Maybe the biggest example.
I mean, I understand this, but when you read my work and I say alpha or beta, I distill it down to those two. I don't.
It gets complicated.
I understand it, and I'm not saying I disagree with it. I'm just saying again, it's like, how do you like? There's the alpha as a demographic, and then there's the alpha as like a mindset. So
got it.
Where does that fit into something like this? That's why I have like people say I'm a Sigma. Well, no, you're not a Sigma. You just want to be out. You think you're like
outsider.
You think you're like Johnny Depp or something. You think you're outside of
no Johnny Depp would be an alpha.
The system, and you're really not. You are in the system. And the very fact that you would call yourself a Sigma or call yourself an alpha or call yourself a whatever.
See, I disagree that theoretically you can't call yourself an alpha because Don Draper, who's the guy who plays Don Draper, he's such a douchebag. But I mean, I know that on at least one occasion he's described himself as an alpha male, and he is. John Hamm, he is. So I don't think that you can't describe yourself as it. It's just very often describing yourself as an alpha is a sign that you're a gamma. But not necessarily. I mean, sometimes it's just how you are. It's just how things are.
That to me says that you're a king, a rich man doesn't have to tell you he's rich.
Right, but he might. He doesn't have to, but he may do it in certain situations. And oftentimes he'll do it a lot. So yeah, I mean, ideally, you shouldn't have to, but there could be a lot of reasons that you might do it. So it doesn't mean like if the king starts telling people, hey, I'm the king, and bringing it up, it doesn't mean that he's not the king. It might mean that he's got some insecurities or whatever, but he is still the king. And the same thing with a guy being rich, who's got to throw all his money around. He doesn't have to do it if he doesn't have to do that to show that he's rich, but just because he is doesn't mean that, just because he is, flashing and telling people he's rich doesn't mean that anything like that. In fact, let's do one more example. I've often noticed this with tall guys, actually. Everybody knows they're tall. You can see that they're tall, but then I'm not saying all or most tall guys. I'm just saying that this is some tall guys. There's a certain type of tall guy who needs to bring it up every 5 seconds, that he's tall. It's like, yeah, we can all see that, but him bringing it up doesn't make him any less tall. I mean, again, it might be a signifier of something else, but he's still tall.
By his demeanor, by his how he speaks, what he's wearing, everything else, you can get that. A guy doesn't have to come in there and go, I'm really rich. Like when you're talking about, have you ever lied?
I heard this thing. This was back when Hillary was running against Obama. So you guys may not remember it, in the Democratic primary in 2007 and 2008. And it was like some body language expert was talking about Hillary's body language and Obama's, and she was saying that there's a difference between male and female body language in that when you're saying something to a woman, she will nod her head up and down. And it doesn't necessarily mean that she's agreeing with you. It means that it's a sign that she's taking in what you're saying, and that men don't do that. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's interesting because I do notice it with a lot of, ever since I've seen that, I do notice it with a lot of women. I bring it up because the hot Israeli chick was just doing that right now.
Lied about your income or whatever. I've never been in the position where I've had to do anything like that. But like if I walk into a room or you walk into a room, or like if you're dressed down, people don't know. Like say,
why do people listen to this garbage? Like, I mean, at least I have an excuse. I'm doing like a or a response video, but like this is only a piece of the podcast. So there's people who actually listen to this whole thing. You've got to be kidding me.
A guy like George Gammon is like a multimillionaire because he just dresses in like, you know, a jacket and a t-shirt and everything. So you don't really get that from him, but he doesn't go in there and say, hey guys, I'm Michael Million Bucks. He doesn't do that because it's his. Exactly. You don't. Alpha.
A confident guy doesn't say, "I'm confident."
He doesn't have to tell you. Makes sense. Like you get it.
All right. Well, thank you for breaking this down. I think we all have a better understanding.
Yeah.
And
no, I actually feel like I understand it less than I did before. I gained nothing from that exchange. Nothing whatsoever. The only thing that I gained from that exchange is a increased feeling of superiority over Rollo and a feeling of superiority over the hot Israeli girl. And neither of those things are healthy. So I gained nothing. I lost from that exchange. Thank you guys for completely wasting my time and making me a worse human being.
And gentlemen out there, Tyler.
So we got a super chat here and a question for Brody. Okay, so if you heard the term, it's two parts. If you heard the term alpha female and women to referring to themselves that way, and do you feel the same negative reaction about alpha female as you do about alpha male?
That's a really...
I want to answer it before she does. Yes, I've heard the term. Generally, I've never heard it used by women. I've seen it used more by men. I'm not sure I've ever heard it used by a woman. I am familiar with the term. I think it's because we would have different types of things. Generally, if we take an alpha female, we would say either just, you know, a really dominant woman, a really masculine woman, or more of a queen bee type, kind of like Regina George in the film Girls, if you guys have ever seen it or are familiar with it. Played by something. I forget. I'm really bad with names. Sorry. She was a really big deal a while ago. Rachel McAdams. So yeah, so I think that there is such a thing. Would I have the same negative impact to it that I do to an alpha? And she's the one saying she has a negative impact to it, but I don't think she's not trying to say she has a negative view of alphas per se. She's saying she has a negative view of people who describe themselves as alphas. And I do too, because it tends to be a bad sign. Like even John Hamm, who really is an alpha male, he's also a huge douchebag. So it invariably seems to be the person saying that they're an alpha is, as far as I can tell, every guy who self-describes himself as self-described, that's redundant. Self-described. Oh no, every guy who describes himself as an alpha male is 100% of the time, in my experience, a douchebag, and overwhelmingly is not actually alpha. It's more of a gamma. So as for alpha female, but as for, is there anything wrong with actually just being an alpha male? No, absolutely not. Anything that there's more than being wrong with a beta male. And I think that she would agree if you broke it down for this. So I would say the same thing for an alpha female. I don't know if I would use the word alpha female, but no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it per se. But would I have a negative reaction to someone who described herself that way? Probably not as much as I do with an alpha male. With a self-described alpha male. And I think that would just be, I don't even, let's not even go into why that would be. That would be a whole separate video. A whole separate video, which will never be made, by the way, but a whole separate video nonetheless. But I guess I would view it negatively, but not nearly as negatively as I would for a self-described alpha male. Let's let her have her say on it.
Really good question. I think that some women in the States, and this is something I've noticed because I'm foreign, even though I don't sound foreign, I've noticed that a lot of women here are so they're so intent on being these strong, independent women, and they kind of ignore some of the things that could possibly make them very happy because of it. Some women are really predisposed to be better at being alpha females, and some women are not. But for me, I'm a very independent woman. I'm very strong, but I recognize that the things that I'm attracted to, or the way that I'm predispositioned to be, is very nurturing, loving, caring.
Yes, real heavy midwit vibes here. What she said, I might respond to later. I guess to me that there's not enough real disagreement with me that I'm going to make too much of a response to that, other than to just point out just how much of a midwit she is.
Caring, and it's okay to recognize that. Some women. How do you say la cliche? Sorry. How do you say they push it away?
Push it away.
Resistant, averse.
They resist. Okay.
Yeah, they're averse to it.
Thank you, Rollo. That was good.
But
well said.
Do you think that the alpha, like, does it give you the same, like, we hate the alpha beta thing like that, like, disgusts us, but when you hear alpha woman, is it like, go and get that bag?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
What do you mean, go and get that bag?
Like, go sis, like, killing it when you call a girl an alpha woman. Because the viewer was asking, like, do you feel the same way about it for, like, between genders? I think it is really different.
If a guy tells you he's an alpha male,
yeah,
like you were just saying a second ago, like, oh, I've never met a guy who calls himself an alpha male actually be an alpha
like
male.
It's gross.
But when a female says, I'm an alpha female, does that give you that same? Do you like go, oh, you're?
It makes me think that they're afraid of forming connections with the opposite sex.
Well, I don't know if I agree. I think I have to imagine she's saying theoretically. She's kind of trying to soften what she's saying. I think she means theoretically because I can't imagine she's regularly or even ever heard a woman describe herself as an alpha female. I think she might have heard women describe themselves as strong and independent. But being an alpha isn't about being strong and independent. Being an alpha is about dominance. Which is why it would be so rare for a woman to describe herself that way. When women very often will say, I'm a strong, independent woman, I get what I want, I'm a bad bitch, whatever like that. But they wouldn't use the word alpha. So maybe that's what she's referring to. And then she's saying, I think that them using that word makes me think that they can't relate right to the opposite sex. Might be true for a self-described alpha male, although I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think that would be more of a gamma issue, like although then again, most self-described alphas are gamma, so maybe she's right on that one. Okay, I'm going to give her that one. But for a woman, would saying like I'm a strong and independent woman, or like I'm a bad bitch or whatever, does that mean she's necessarily going to have problems connecting in a romantic relationship? Maybe a little bit, but not to the same extent as a gamma male, a self-described alpha who's actually a gamma would. So no, I don't think it's the same.
And I think it's the same with men, by the way, who say they're alpha males. I think that they enjoy the company of a woman physically, but I don't think they enjoy having conversations with them. I think it's the same with women who call them.
I don't know if that's true. That they like even a guy like Myron. Do I think that he wants a woman who, just sleeps with him, waits on him, but otherwise doesn't talk? No, I don't. I really don't think so. I think that he would. I mean, conversations. I mean, Myron's not the world's brightest guy either. I don't think he would want a woman who was smarter than him. He probably would prefer a woman who is like at least 10 IQ points below him, so he's the smarter one in the relationship. But no, I think that these guys want some connection still. I think they want some connection still. and certainly want to have some kind of conversation still. So I'm talking about guys even at the real extreme male dominance Myron end, let alone the more normie types who are in the red pill. So I think she's off base.
Themselves alpha females. We need each other. We have to recognize that we need each other. Some people might be better having the woman be the provider and the man be the nurturer. Doesn't matter, but the general population is not that way, and it's okay to recognize that and to lean into it.
I've never heard a woman call herself an alpha female. However,
Thank you.
I will say I've heard
lots of
countless women say, "I'm a bad bitch. All my bad bitches. Where my bad bitches at?" Is that the same thing of being a bad bitch and an alpha? I don't even know, man. I'm a bad bitch.
You could argue independent is alpha too.
See, and I know where that guy was going with this.
Yeah.
I get this all the time because like women will say, "Oh, I would never get with the guy who calls himself an alpha male. Oh, he's using it unironically." That's why that's why I had to make the.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you should be coming to me for relationship advice, especially if you're a woman. But if a woman was coming to me like relationship, like looking for a husband, I mean, that would be one of the first things I would say to avoid is a guy who unironically is describing himself as an alpha male. Now, does it mean he's not a good guy necessarily? No, but it's such a huge red flag that I would be very concerned. The other thing that I would mention is a guy who asks for pictures of your feet, because I feel like the chances of him being a serial killer are just too high. Then again, apparently every guy is into that stuff now, so I don't, maybe not. Those would be the two big red flags I would have for women looking for men.
Make the distinction with okay, how about a high value male? How about Captain America versus Iron Man? Whatever. When I talk about those things, there are so many podcasts and so many shows saying, "Oh, the alpha."
But is Rollo wearing a watch? You don't need a watch. Don't you have a phone? Also, why is he on his right? Aren't you supposed to wear it on your left arm?
Male has been debunked, and here's why, and here's the studies and everything else. And those are the same people that if a woman comes in there and calls herself an alpha female, they're like, "Oh yes, of course."
Yeah, right. Because we were in a gynocentric conspiracy. Jesus Christ, Rollo! How many times do we have to hear the same thing? And just stop it. Just stop.
There's an alpha female. Yes, yeah. You go, girl. That's what it ends up being. So there can only be an alpha female, but there's no such thing as an alpha male. And I'm like, that to me says more about the mindset of the people who are describing all of this.
Well, what do you think of the mindset of somebody who spurgs about this bullshit for 5 hours at a time once a week, and has been doing that for the last 30 years? Not to mention has written I guess not however long he's had the podcast, but has taken the time to write 5 books about it now. So what do you think about that mindset?
Than it does about the actual definition or the actual abstraction that is alpha. So my point was this, is that there's no such thing as an alpha female. There is only alpha men. So the things and the quality.
Yeah, I think that there's something to that. Alpha is just maybe technically you could say there's an alpha female, but to me, it's not really applicable to women.
The attributes, the characteristics that make a woman independent. She's got her own business. She's got her degree. She's got, and statistically speaking, more women are in college. More women are earning more money. From a numbers perspective, this is all backed up. But when women can't get the guy that they want to, maybe they're nurturing, right? They want to embrace that feminine side, but they can't get to it because for the better part of their lives, they've been turned into the men that they want to marry. They are the alpha male.
This is false. This is just everything he said there is bullshit.
With tits and vagina. That's what they are.
Jesus.
And so they wonder, well, where's my guy? Where's the guy who wants to be my equal partner and go off into family land and have babies and everything? And they find that the guys that would be their equal or would be higher than them don't want to have anything to do with them because they're not feminine. Those guys are looking for women who are feminine. And that's the number one problem that I deal with right now when I'm dealing with, when I'm counseling women, is Rollo, I can't find the right guy.
That would be another thing. I would say if you're a woman who's lost and, he's looking for answers or guidance regarding relationships, but life in general, but relationships specifically, that this would be my first piece of advice, would be to not go to Rollo Tomasi to get answers. That would be the first thing that I would say to them.
Right guy, she's in her 30s or whatever, and but I did everything right. I did everything society ever told me to do. I went to college. I got my degree. I've got my business going for me. I got to freeze my eggs because I can't find Mr. Right, and they're building themselves up into this alpha.
Well, yeah, and they did do everything right because you're talking about two separate things. People, when they tell you to go to school and get a good career and stuff or start a business, make money, that isn't in service of finding a good husband. This is saying you do all this stuff and this is going to set the stage so that you've got career fulfillment and that you've got financial security. Because whether you're in a relationship or not, those are going to be things you want in order to be happy. It doesn't mean that those things by themselves are going to make you happy. And it certainly doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get a good marriage. It's just a separate thing. So it's not like those women made any mistake. Now, at some point in life, you do kind of have to prioritize things. Do I have to make some career sacrifices for the sake of a relationship or for the sake of family? And that's a decision that's really going to depend on the person, on the relationship, and what they prioritize in life. It may be that, some people who really do want and even need a relationship also are very career driven and they need to have a spouse. And this could be a male or a female who is okay with making sacrifices for the sake of the first person's career. A good example of this would be if you were a guy, for example, like he may really want to get married and have kids, but he's also a football coach, which means he's going to have to be moving around the country every 2 to 3 years for new jobs and stuff. So he's going to have to find a woman who not only is a good match with him, but is going to be willing to pick up and move their kids every 2 to 3 years so he can take a new job in the middle of nowhere coaching offensive line or whatever. And, and it kind of living a kind of hand-to-mouth existence unless he makes it to the big time, becomes a head coach somewhere or like a head coach in someplace like that. And so he's going to have fewer options fewer romantic options because there's not going to be as many women willing to do that. And it could be the same thing reversed with a woman who's going to be career focused and stuff. It may be harder still because you'd have fewer men who are willing to sacrifice for her career than the reverse. So there is some of that, but that doesn't mean that you tell women don't have a career or a job or don't have a career or get education. They're just separate things. And having a job and career is all about giving you options. So you can make that decision as opposed to being in a situation where you're forced to go with somebody who maybe isn't good for you for financial reasons. Because that's almost, it could work out and it has worked out, but the odds are not as good. The odds are higher that you're going to be in a bad match and that's going to cause problems down the line.
Alpha ideal, but that ideal is based on a male archetype. The real alpha female is the one. It's not Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook. It's Renee Summerfield.
Well, yeah, but that's, fair enough. It's not Sheryl. Would it be again? Alpha is not really a particularly meaningful term when applied to women. It's not the appropriate usage of the term. Would I call if we're going to use alpha female, would I call Sheryl Sandberg an alpha? No. However, Sheryl is a great example of his point being kind of bullshit because, if you read about Cheryl's relationship with her, now deceased husband, it's pretty clear that he was the more dominant partner and that she really leaned on him a lot for his, they don't know, the expression behind every good man is a good woman or something like that. And that was kind of the thing what happened there. It was she was the one making the big shot making all the money, but it was really, she was really dependent, on for him for emotional support. So, so I mean, like, married, had great marriage, had great kids and stuff, whatever. So she's a horrible because she did all the stuff that Rollo would say you shouldn't do to find a man, and she did, and she found a good partner. And then the other example he used is the swimsuit models. Like, yes, that probably would be a better example of an alpha female, the one who's got the high SMV. But again, those people are themselves, like the swimsuit model is very successful. And I don't know who that chick is who he mentioned, but if there's anything like Emily Ratajkowski, she is way more successful and famous than her husband. I mean, every bit as so much as somebody like Sheryl Sandberg was more successful and famous than her husband. So it's actually the same thing. It's just that one is famous for doing it in the corporate world, and one is famous for being a model. But in substance, they're actually the same thing when you look under the surface.
The swimsuit model, okay? Because that is the apex of femininity. That's the highest top of that pyramid that we're looking at for femininity. So if we're going to define alpha or beta in a masculine...
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. So I think he's kind of got a point. What I don't know is if he's actually saying that high SMV for a woman means she's a quote unquote alpha female, which we'll use right in this context for want of a better term. So this sounds like, if that is what he's saying, and I may be off base, maybe he's not, because I'm really not sure, then that would mean like the girls in those Girls Gone Wild videos, like back in the day, who were like generally the peak of desirability, were alpha females, which is ridiculous. I mean, they were all, they were low class tramps. I mean, and so I don't. But maybe but basically he's saying that stuff's alpha. I don't know what he's saying actually. Is he saying that they're alpha females, or that they're alpha females if they're making a lot of money doing it, or what? So yeah, I think he's maybe oversimplifying here, or I could just be totally off base.
Masculine or a feminine term. If you're a bad bitch and you've got your shit together and you make your own damn money, you're basically a man.
No, that's just not true. That's just not. So Emily Ratajkowski is basically a man because she's, she at least claims to be independent. I don't really think she is actually, but she's she probably would describe herself as a bad bitch. She makes a lot of money, like a lot. Pretty sure she's a woman. Pretty sure she's not like actually a man underneath. So I mean, what he said is just totally retarded. Sheryl Sandberg is not a man. It's very clear that she had the female role in her relationship with her, deceased husband. There are plenty of women who work and make their own money. Hell, there are women who just who actually support their husband. Like I can tell you that, and I think I mentioned this before. In Israel, in the ultra Orthodox community, it's the norm. I mean, it's starting to change now, but for a long time, it was the norm for the man not to work at all. He'd be studying all day, and the woman was the 100% the provider. And I don't think anybody would have said that, she was taking on the male role in the house, because that's ridiculous. It's just not how ultra Orthodox households work. So, I mean, what he's saying is just factually incorrect.
And generally, heterosexual men don't want to get with other men.
Boom, let's just pause right there for 1 second. You said that is the number one problem that you're facing. Like the people
counseling women.
Okay, so I don't want to skip over that. If that's
I would say the number one problem is that Rollo is counseling women at all. I would say that itself is the number one problem.
Number one thing that you're seeing a 30-something-year-old woman who is relatively successful and is educated, has not had kids yet, and she's the breadwinner in the family, or no family, but she's doing her thing. She's quote-unquote a bad bitch, and she's wondering why she can't find a high-quality man, high-value man. That's the problem. Explain that exact thing for a second.
I did a show. I did a recent show about, I think it was about 6 months ago. Had Steve Harvey was on there, and some chick in the audience stood up, and I think she was like 35, 36 years old, and she was there with her mom. and she was explaining that she was, did everything the right way. She was 35, 36 years old. She stands up and she's, very religious. She's like, I'm, praying to the Lord for the right guy. But I did everything, Steve. I got my college degree. I've got my money is down. I think I'm a great person. I'd be a great catch. And of course, Steve Harvey just kind of fumbles through the whole thing. But I'm watching this, and the reason
I like Steve Harvey. He's a good guy.
Why I use this as a critique was she's representative of certainly a demographic of women right now who are in the same boat. They don't understand why they can't find a guy who is up here when they've turned themselves into the man they want to marry as it is.
I believe that's exactly what Steve Harvey said. Is that you are the man that you're looking for.
You are the man you want to get with.
Damn.
And that's really, and that's.
I'm sorry. I think that's bad advice. Now, if there's a kernel of truth in here, women in general, for either partner, it's going to be very hard, man or woman, it's going to be very hard for them to sustain a healthy and happy long-term relationship if they do not respect the other partner. That's true. That's true for period. However, for a woman, if she doesn't respect the man, it's going to be hard to sustain a relationship, period, even an unhappy and unhealthy one. A man who she does not respect, and not just like professionally or personally, but it can even be something like morally. Like even if she doesn't morally respect it, she's not only not going to be able to maintain attraction to him, but she's going to develop a repulsion to him. And this would now, there are women out there who are making a lot of money who have no problem, being with a guy who makes less money than they do. For instance, my sister-in-law makes a lot more money than my brother. But they're both, secure enough in it that it doesn't bother them. However, that's not going to be the case for every woman. There are going to be some women who just won't be able to respect a guy who isn't at least as accomplished and successful as they are. Not saying it's even the norm, because I don't know, but that does happen. And then there's the reverse too. You're going to have guys who can't handle their female partner making more than they do or being more successful than they do. I can tell you, I would not be able to handle it. For me, it's not an issue because I don't want a relationship, but I would not be able to handle it, which is my problem. But like even somebody as self-aware and evolved or as enlightened as me is saying that, you can understand it probably could be an issue. So yeah, you being successful as a woman, in a sense, it could lower your options depending on what it is you're looking for. Like if you're somebody who's okay with the guy not being as successful as you, then yeah, it probably won't. I mean, it could be, but it also could not be as much of a problem. It really depends. But if you're like a lot of women, and I don't know what percentage is, but a lot of women who aren't okay with their husband being much less professionally successful than they are, then I mean, it could be a problem. It could be a problem. So, I mean, it could be a problem in terms of like reducing your options. So I think Steve Harvey was wrong to say what he said, if that is what he said. And I think Rollo's wrong about what he said.
That's tough medicine.
So what's the ideal woman then?
Well, so here's my point is the problem I run into is when I talk to these women, like I have hope for you. You're 23, the same age as my daughter, by the way.
Both these girls are young, attractive, and smart. So what's your advice for them?
She was just saying.
I'm not going to get. Well, we're not even going to open the young and attractive can of worms. That's very relative. Smart. Did he say smart or did he say very smart? Because Torsia is clearly not smart. Torsia is like a 100, 105 IQ. Clearly. I'm no hate. I don't dislike Torsia. But she's clearly average intelligence. And as we've discussed before, average intelligence is really stupid. The other girl is a classic midwit. If she's smart, then I'm smart. And I'm not smart. I'm pretty stupid. And she's about as stupid as me. and as stupid as Rollo. We're all a bunch of fucking morons. And she's definitely no better than us on that front. So again, if you want to say that she's smart compared to the average person, I mean, I guess you could say that's like, I mean, okay, so you're less retarded than the average person who's a complete retard. You're only a half retard. It's just not. I mean, I guess, but I don't know if I would want to describe that as smart.
It's okay. Don't be averse to the feminine, right? Yeah. When we're talking to a woman who's like 31, 32, 33 years old, and you tell her that, and for her entire life, she's like, I'm professional. I've done everything by the book. I've done everything society told me to do to be a bad bitch, to be an alpha female.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Most women who do that are ultimately getting married and having kids. And if you compare their marriage success rate to women of the lower classes who don't have as much education, who don't make as much money, it's the marriages of the high earning women, highly educated women, are more successful, which almost certainly has more to do with the higher IQs in that group, not due to the education and success, but nonetheless. So I mean, Mr. Data Rollo is ignoring the science.
Female to be a strong, independent woman, registered trademark. And now I can't find the right guy. It must be men's fault because they're not living up to my expectations. And my only recourse is to say, well, you need to feminize yourself, right? You need to get in touch with your inner female or your inner feminine.
I disagree. I think that's bad advice. Here's the fact that here's something I would say to somebody, anybody, man or woman, gay or straight, who's looking for a relationship. I'm not going to put you down for wanting a relationship, for wanting a partner. I understand that for the overwhelming majority of people, that's a need. However, I hope you find it. And I get that you'll never be totally fulfilled without it. There is the possibility that you might not. It's unfortunate, but it's not as unfortunate as, some 5-year-old starving to death. The world is a very unfair and often cruel place. So the first thing I would say is you've got to accept that there's a real possibility that you're not going to find it. And then you got to accept that, a no relationship is preferable to a really dysfunctional and bad relationship. Now, it might not be preferable to a mediocre relationship. That depends on the person, but it will be preferable to a bad relationship. And that if you have to really, compromise and, fundamentally change who you inherently are, the person you inherently are, the relationship isn't going to work. You're not going to get a good relationship that way. So the first thing I would say is to be true to yourself. I think that that's the most important thing in anything you do. Even if you actually believe in the MGTOW stuff, I would say the most important thing is that you be true to yourself and that you be honest with yourself. And the other is accepting reality, is accepting that, the bad parts of reality along with the good parts, and then working around the bad parts, working with the good and around the bad. And so that's what I would say. But people who tell you have to fundamentally change to get a man, who you have to fundamentally, quote, feminize yourself, whatever the hell that means. No, I think that would be a mistake. You are who you are. Now, if you have a real problem with interpersonal dynamics, or you really are a bad partner in a relationship, you're too clingy, you're too bossy, too shit like that, those are things you can work on and benefit from. But actually, just some vague, be more feminine thing, like bake more cookies, that's not going to help. And just trying to be some archetype that you dreamed up in your head, that's not going to help either. And if it does get you a relationship, it's going to be a relationship that's ultimately unsatisfying for you.
Feminine, like we always tell guys, you need to get in touch with your feminine side or your emotions and everything. It's the opposite. I'm trying to tell somebody who is been masculinized to get in touch with their feminine side.
Women are very in touch with their emotions. If anything, women need to be less emotional. One of the reasons it can be tough dealing with women is because they're so emotional.
And for me to do that, particularly as a guy, it sounds like I'm saying, dumb yourself down.
Well, isn't that what you are saying? Because that's what I'm hearing. And don't tell me that I'm not listening, because I've listened to way more of you than anybody else would.
Be dumber. Because femininity seems dumb to that particular demographic of women. And
I think that it's more the MGTOW red pillars types who associate femininity with dumbness, shallowness, and stupidity. And if we think about it in culture, there is a lot of that. So I mean, it would really depend on who the advice was coming from. But if you're telling a woman be more feminine, of course she's going to take that as saying to be dumber, because how else could you mean it? What else would you mean by that? It either means be dumber or be more submissive. When you break it down, that's what you're saying. And you're going to say, oh, no, I don't mean submissive. Or no, I don't mean dumber. It's like, well, I mean, yeah, you kind of do. I mean, you say you don't, but in practice you do.
And that's hard to do. So they're resistant and they're averse
to hearing what I have to say.
Yeah, 30 plus.
So
usually.
She's ladies, as being in your early 20s, how do you feel about that?
Women, just like you said in the beginning of this podcast, you said that part of the human condition is you need discontent. You have to be constantly passionate about something. Women are the same way. If that's education, and in most cases it is, there's a reason that a lot of women are taking over universities, because we love getting educated, we love learning, we love this. But
people don't go to universities to be educated. Very few people should be pursuing higher education. I would say 15% of the population, maybe. The rest should go to high school and then a trade school. Like the higher education is a bubble. It's a racket, and women do it because they're more conformist, and they're better at like sort of structured rule following environments. And they're told like you do this and it's punching your ticket to get a better job. So they're better able to buckle down and do it, or they're more likely to buy that it's going to be beneficial to them. But women going to universities is just like you have more dog groomers who have degrees. That's what you get from like all this education bullshit. I mean, remember, education is not going to make you any smarter. So most people should not be going to university, man or woman. But women don't go because they love education and they love learning. They might love the credentialism. They might buy more into this idea that it's going to help them get ahead. And maybe it will to some extent. They might be better at just following rules, and they certainly are. But no, women don't love education and love learning. I would say a love for learning, real learning, is much more common with men. Way more common with men than it is for women. Like, how many women do you know who obsessively research like all these spurgy aspects of something the way a lot of men do with football? Or, even something like basketball, like talking about like all the different statistics, knowing all the different types of defenses, doing draft boards and stuff. Like, can you think of anything where the large numbers of women do something like that? Like, I can't. So, learning, I would say men are much more passionate about learning than women. Real learning.
But we've for some reason, feminism has gotten us to a place, and I still consider myself a feminist. But
yeah, well, that's a problem. The F word, that to me is a conversation ender. Like, if a woman says that she's a feminist, the conversation is over. I'm not going to engage anymore after that. And it's just a word that by itself inspires a real negative emotion in me. But it's also kind of a vaguely defined word. Like, by feminist, do we mean that women have equal worth to men? That women should have the same legal rights and opportunities as men? Then absolutely, I would be a strong yes to all of those. Strong yes to all of those, absolutely. And certainly I can recognize that there were very beneficial things, not just the first wave feminism, but even second wave feminism had a lot of stuff of making sure that women were treated equally in the workplace, or that there was more equal treatment of women in culture, because there was a lot of misogyny in culture that maybe we weren't even aware of. Yeah, I'm all for that. I think that stuff's really important. I'm all for that. So if that's what you mean by feminism, then sure, I'm down. But if you mean anything beyond that, no, I'm totally against it. Totally against it. And so I guess you would say, if that stuff is feminism, then okay, I'm for it. I'm for it. But it also means feminism's work is done. It's time to shut it down, which isn't to say that I don't think that there should still be women's groups or that there are certain issues, like, for instance, domestic violence, that more concern women. I still do think that there are women's issues and that we need to worry about those. But if you're talking about actually like, oh, I want to like, change the culture and make the culture like more about female empowerment or make more laws that are favoring women and stuff like that, or doing whatever bullshit feminists are talking about now. I think now they mostly just talk about race privilege or whatever. No, totally against that. I'm okay with them having those beliefs. It's just that I would never engage with them. It's because our worldviews are so different that there's nothing productive we could say. So it's a conversation stopper to me. Or I'm certainly not going to talk about feminism with it because I just don't care. I'm just too contemptuous of it. So, but whatever, let's let her finish her point.
But in America, it's gotten us to a place where it's like toxic feminism in the same way that there's toxic masculinity and
No, I completely see. As much as as negative as my feelings are about feminism, it's nowhere near as bad as toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity gets people killed, both men and women. Toxic feminism is just really annoying. There's no equivalent. And that's because that's what it comes down to. That's why, like, you see people who are saying stuff like, well, why is black racism against whites okay and white racism against blacks is not okay? It's like, first of all, neither are okay. But just because neither are okay, that doesn't make them equivalent. Okay, that doesn't make them equivalent. White racism against blacks, first of all, there's a different historical context. Two is, at the end of the day, whether you like blacks or not, they don't have any power. They don't have any power. The power in this country is in the hands of whites. Now, granted, whites is kind of a bullshit identity group because really it's liberal whites and conservative whites. But even still, to an outsider view, it's whites. And and that's the same thing with women. At the end of the day, women don't really have any power. In fact, it's actually red pillars and MGTOWs who are kind of feminists themselves in a way, because they've created this world where women actually have all this power. And the truth is, women don't. There are individual with women with power, sure, just like there are individual black people with power. But as a group, women are completely powerless, or close to completely powerless. And so no, they're not the same at all. To try to both sides this is ridiculous. And it's just so indicative of the kind of shallow thinking that 115 IQ midwits do.
And men only want young women who are going to be quiet. Women don't want men who are going to be. Wait, what's toxic masculinity?
Tersha's like, does not compute. I like Torsha, but she might be one of those people who comes off as a little slower than she actually is. But she just sounded like so confused there.
The way that I would categorize the people that I was describing before, these like alpha males who describe themselves as alpha males.
Yes, I agree. Fresh in the Fit is a great example of toxic masculinity. Again, it's just like Myron is the best example you'll ever see of a gamma male. He's also the best. That show in general is the best example you will ever see of toxic masculinity. Well, no, I would say that would be Undead Chronic and Ribby. But the second biggest example of toxic masculinity you will ever see is Fresh and Fit.
But like a definition would be an alpha male is like the.
Well, my definition for toxic. First of all, toxic masculinity is a term that I would only use in very, very specific situations. I think it's overused.
Those cheekbones. Are you kidding me?
But I also think toxic masculinity manifests itself in a lot of young American men.
I disagree. I really disagree. I mean, you say like Myron actually isn't that young. I think he's like 30 years old, maybe a little bit older. But no, Zoomer guys, I would say seem pretty laid back. I don't think that I don't see a lot of toxic masculinity. And honestly, I would have seen more of it when I was a kid than I think that there is now. I think Zoomers are, more laid back than the guys in my generation were. The older millennials.
Who are pursuing women in the wrong way and then being frustrated by the results because they just don't understand that women are equal human beings to them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's the frustration that comes first that leads them to the red pill. The other thing is I kind of object to the use of the word equal because, like, yeah, in an absolute sense that's fair, that's true, absolutely, I believe that. But if you think about, like, what I always think about is a charge, like an electrical charge. There's a positive charge and a negative charge. Does it really make sense to describe them as equal? It's just like, I mean, because there's just an inherent polarity to them. I mean, like, now technically, of course, they're equal. They have to be an equal charge, or that wouldn't make sense. That's what makes it a positive, negative. There is that polarity and stuff. But I often feel that feminists or liberals are often use the equality thing as a argument against polarity. Because if we were going to take this to its extreme, like, is a positive charge better than a negative charge? No. Or neither would vice versa. However, we could take this further. Is a dominant personality in a relationship superior to the submissive personality in a relationship? Technically speaking, no. There's nothing superior about it. But these people would be the first people to tell you, yes, there is. So I don't really know how we're using the word equal here. That's just my 2 cents on that.
How are they approaching women in the wrong way?
I think people who listen to certain radio shows.
She doesn't look as good from that angle.
And what their understanding is.
You know what? I think one part, she wears too much makeup and also the lips. It looks to me like she's had lip fillers, and unless your name's Kylie Jenner, stay away from the lip fillers. They don't work. You're not black. Don't try to be.
All I need to do is flash my money and work out and get a woman. And if she's talkative, she's arguing with me, like they put labels on women like argumentative or masculine.
I mean, those are masculine. I don't know. Those are real things. And they tend to often be culturally influenced. I mean, a woman who's going to be arguing. Another thing you have to keep in mind is that a lot of I know the Fresh and Fit are mostly dealing with white girls in Miami, but but some of it, they at least have some familiarity with the black community, where they often do have to deal with very argumentative and bossy women. And but also, like, the women in the, dumb young women in Miami probably are really argumentative, and it gets annoying. And it doesn't mean that they may be argumentative because the guys that are with are idiots, but even the same, like, it's not that I'm agreeing with Fresh and Fit on a moral ground. It's that, like, I at least understand what they're saying, even if I don't agree with it. It's about understanding, not agreeing. And so she's like, and I feel like she doesn't even necessarily understand what they're saying. Not that they ever say anything that's worth understanding, so I'm going to cut her some slack.
Or, this and that. I've been labeled all of those things. And I don't think...
Well, I won't label you that. I will just label you as an arrogant midwit.
Myself as that. So I think that...
Well, you just described yourself as strong and independent earlier, and those are... there's nothing wrong with being strong and independent. In fact, I would say both of those things are necessary to, well, I don't know about strong, but independent is something, it's just a necessary thing to be in a healthy relationship. You don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's not independent. And you probably don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who's not strong. It's really just more about how we define these terms, because if they're not strong and independent, and these are things that are just as important for men as they are for women, in a relationship, it's going to be hard. The relationship's going to be harder when both partners aren't like I said, strong and independent. You don't want to be with somebody who's really needy. That's going to make the relationship more difficult and not as good. You don't want to be with somebody who's very fragile. It just depends on how we define these terms, like a strong. But you don't want to be somebody who is really fragile and weak. That's going to lead to relationship problems. So, like, I think this is more a problem of definitions and conflations of different terms with incorrect ideas.
I think that the reason that they see that is because they see women as competition. They're not comfortable enough with their own. I don't know if the word I'm looking for is masculinity, but like their own ability to be a good partner. But they just want a pet instead of any.
Definitely true. And it's beyond that. I think that I've noticed this for a long time, especially with guys like Roosh. And, it's very common in the red pill world. And, they talk about the irony of the MGTOWs and the red pillars who are all like, women ain't shit, or they describe themselves as men going their own way, but then they devote all their time to talking about women, which means they're not going their own way. So it's the most ironically named group ever. But there's a deeper level of irony. And that's like the talking about women all the time is not the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. And the actual problem is that these red pill guys, their entire self-definition is based on how they relate to women as a group. They aren't able to just be men in and of itself. They're not, able to just say, I'm a man and go out and do, masculine things or whatever, and just, be comfortable in their own skin. Their idea of masculinity has no value. Their idea of masculinity is something that's measured against femininity. So that when women as a group don't behave in the way that gives them validation of their feelings of masculinity, and part of that is the feeling of men as a group as masculinity, it makes them really insecure and angry at women. So what they want is a system where men as a group have a lot of status as men, just as men. This is totally understandable. This is what has existed for the most of human history. This is what civilization is. Civilization has accorded men as a group with a higher status, just being a man. Now, it doesn't mean that there weren't men who were, treated like disposable junk. That's always been the case too. It wasn't that every individual man had high status. No, it was that men as a group had high status. That's simply not the case today. Men as a group have power, and they do have some status as men, but for a little bit. I mean, not nearly as much as we used to, but there's a little bit of residual there. I think that MGTOW types don't notice it, but it's there. But men as a group don't have it, and it's created a situation where a lot of men feel very insecure about that. Now, some have adapted and are fine with it. It's like I would say most have adapted and don't really care. They're able to live their lives. But there's a lot of like more lost types who do have a problem with it. And it's unfortunate that there aren't better support structures for those guys. There aren't more like type of like because our society is so adamatized, that they don't have these groups or like anything where they can really support each other as men beyond MGTOW, beyond things that are all based around hating women. Or about, increasing your masculinity and stuff like that. So it's totally natural. I don't think that these guys necessarily need to be villainized. You just need to understand that, just saying, oh, these guys are bad, shame them and whatever. It's like, you can do that if that's what you want. And I'm not saying you need to worry and try to help these guys. I'm not doing anything to try to help them. But I do think if you want to like meaningfully understand what's the cause of the phenomena, you have to go beyond just that these guys are pigs, and understand that there's a natural human reaction to this loss of status. And I think that there's a natural male drive to have status. And maybe as men, we need to work to overcome that, but it's not our fault for having that inclination that, we have this inclination that we want some status vis-a-vis women. Maybe we're wrong to want that. Maybe we have to overcome that, but it's not our fault if we have it. So demonizing these guys who just really, in a lot of senses, just don't know any better is misguided, in my opinion. That's all for now, and I will see you in the next.